At 73, Sting has long been considered a musical genius, a lyrical poet, and a spiritual seeker whose solo career has earned him immense acclaim beyond the boundaries of rock and reggae. But what fans didn't see, what they only speculated about for decades, was the searing tension that poisoned the very band that launched him into global stardom. The Police, and in a revelation that has left longtime followers stunned and nostalgic hearts aching, Sting has finally pulled back the curtain on the emotional turmoil that defined the group's short but explosive reign, naming Stewart Copeland, the band's powerhouse drummer, as the one person in his career he truly hated working with, a stunning admission that reignites one of rock's most whispered about rivalries and forces a re-examination of how greatness often emerges from dysfunction. Because while the world sang along to Roxanne and swayed to every breath you take, behind the studio doors and under the stage lights was a story of ego clashes, bruised pride, and a battle for control that made the band's internal dynamic more volatile than any political theme Sting ever wrote about. And though the trio Sting, Copeland, and guitarist Andy Summers crafted some of the most iconic and innovative tracks of the late 20th century, their interpersonal connection was anything but harmonious, with Sting now confirming what many suspected, that his working relationship with Stewart was marked by constant arguing, simmering resentment, and mutual disdain disguised as artistic friction. And while Sting has always been regarded as a perfectionist, someone who brought deep introspection and complex musicality to pop music, he now confesses that Stewart's rebellious, confrontational energy constantly undermined his leadership in the band, turning every rehearsal into a shouting match, every recording session into a pressure cooker, and every creative decision into a tug-of-war that drained not just their friendship, but their ability to function as a team. And what's most revealing is how long Sting carried the weight of that animosity in silence, maintaining a professional public image even as privately he grew to detest what he described as Stewart's compulsive contrarianism, recounting one particular incident during the recording of their final studio album, Synchronicity, when a disagreement over tempo escalated into a near fist fight, prompting the studio engineer to walk out and leaving Andy Summers sitting in stunned silence as the two frontmen screamed at each other, not about music anymore, but about respect, trust, and years of pent-up frustration. And while Stewart has often tried to paint these clashes as the byproduct of creative chemistry, Sting's tone is anything but romantic as he reflects on the psychological damage of constantly defending his artistic instincts from someone he says wanted the spotlight just as much but didn't want to carry the responsibility. And though they made peace long enough to deliver a nostalgic reunion tour in 2007, Sting now says that every day of that tour was a reminder of why they broke up in the first place, why he swore he'd never return to that emotional battlefield, and why he ultimately needed the freedom of a solo career to preserve his sanity, adding that even the fans who cheered them on stage had no idea how fractured things were backstage, how often he went to sleep fuming or rehearsed alone just to avoid another explosive argument with Stewart, whose talent he doesn't deny but whose personality he describes as toxic when left unchecked. And it's in this reflection that Sting finally opens up about the emotional toll of being in a band that felt like a pressure chamber, saying that while the music lives on, so do the scars. And though he's worked with countless musicians in the decades since, some famous, some obscure, he's never encountered anyone who got under his skin the way Stewart did, and never felt the same persistent sense of combativeness that made him dread going into the studio during those last few years. And for fans who once hoped for another reunion, Sting's words are a sobering confirmation that what's broken often stays broken, that some partnerships, no matter how successful, leave wounds too deep to fully heal. And now, as fans revisit their old vinyls and playlists, they do so with a bittersweet awareness that the magic of the Police was forged not from friendship, but from friction, from the relentless crashing of two great forces who pushed each other to their limits and ultimately to the end. And in naming Stewart Copeland as the one bandmate he truly hated, Sting hasn't just spilled gossip or vented old grudges. He's made a statement about the true cost of creation, about the emotional battles that rage behind every verse and chorus, and about the loneliness that can fester even in the brightest spotlight, reminding us that even legends are human, and that behind every timeless song might lie a memory someone's been trying to forget.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.